Okay, so this is a really quick video about lots of different ways of adding texture and pattern to the surface of your clay. So these are just a few suggestions. There's actually lots and lots of different ways you can do this. So obviously you've got your basic tools that we have in the studio, and all of these, if you play with them, can make some amazing marks. These round ones I've found actually make really nice feather type marks, or they can do scales. Keep them a little bit shorter, they work for scales. Obviously we've got a straight side, so that can do nice straights, and the closer you do it together, you get that kind of mark. You can do lines, you can press, or you can drag to give you lines, which are slightly different, and the edges of them are slightly different. You can just go in and tap and use this to add texture, which can be a little bit fur-like. So, and that's just with a simple wooden modelling tool that most of us have in our studio. That's just a few of the marks you can make with this. You can do cross hatches on this. You do the wider marks, so it's just more of a change in the surface than an actual mark, so you get a ripple flow in the surface. You can make marks with your fingers or fingernails if you have them. You can use the backs of nails as well. So I would definitely recommend just having a play and maybe seeing how many different marks you can make from a single tool. You see that one, to me that looks like that would be lovely for a pair of insect wings. You just going on there. Oh. So yeah, so have a play with your standard tools. I also have things that I've found over the years. This is just a paintbrush handle, the end fell off. But I love this because it gives me two different size circles, which is great for things like eyes, or centers of flowers, anything like that kind of thing where you want the dips and the holes in things. So that's another great one. I've also got a stone that I found on a beach, a bit of a pumice lava stone, and I love this. This makes really lovely marks in the clay, that I think is fabulous. And like I say, this was just a found piece of stone on the beach. So if you keep your eyes open for things, another one that found object that I like is poppy seed heads. Once they're dried out, they're quite subtle, but they make fantastic starry patterns in the clay, which I just think are lovely. So you can use plant matter, you can put leaves in and roll the leaves in, or anything like that. That will add a pattern in the clay. You can buy tools like this one, you just roll it. I do have a handle that this goes on, so it's a proper roller as well, but you can just roll freehand like that. Or we've got stamps, wooden stamps. You have to make sure you get these pressed fairly evenly everywhere to get a nice good stamp from it. So but the wooden stamps are great. You can get some beautiful patterns with them in their designs. So that's another one. The other thing that I sometimes use is lace. So you can pop it on the surface and then just go over with a rolling pin so that it is pressed into the surface of the clay. You do need quite a thick lace. The fine ones don't mark quite as well. But then you get a lovely lace surface on your clay. And if you go along the edge, you can get a nice lacy edge to a piece. Careful how you cut out and cut away, which is lovely. So you can use anything really to press in. I've also got a roller that I made that's just a cardboard tube with a hot glue gun pattern on it that just does a random pattern in the clay. I was just playing when I had a go at making this, but you could do something a little bit more precise. So that's a lot about putting texture into the clay, so pressing in. Of course, you can always stick on too. So you can, in fact, it's sometimes nice to do both. So you add a bit of depth to a piece because you've got the pieces that are dipped in, and then you've got pieces that raise up. So you add a bit more texture and depth to the surface of the piece. And you can obviously add anything to this. You could, like I'm just using a cutter for a little teardrop shape with the offcuts of clay here, and sticking them in, squishing with my thumb a bit, and doing it around the imprint from the poppies. You can do, if you do little balls, you can actually, it works really well for something like scales. If you just put the ball down and then squidge on one side, it works really well. You have to try and keep the balls about the same size for this one. But outside of that, it does make a lovely surface texture. Okay, we can also add a bit to the surface and continue with the same mark making using the same tool, but just adding a bit of height. So if we put a bit on there and then just go and mark in so that it joins in with the other texture, but is a bit more raised on the surface. It just adds a bit of depth to the whole surface. So we've got the indents, the level of the surface, and then a raised bit. So we're working on 3 levels of depth by doing that. You can also, on any parts that have been stuck on, you can also press in and do the same kind of mark making on those raised pieces as well, just again to add another layer of depth to the piece. So really what it's all about is playing. It's about trying different things out and seeing what you get from those things. Just playing with the clay. I've found over the years that I like when I curl the clay around, I get little scrolls that I quite enjoy. I think they make nice surface textures, but any kind of shapes or forms that you like that you can just put on the surface to make it interesting and give you pattern and texture. Now that's all about mark making in the clay surface. There's also, we can use things like coloured slips to add colour and pattern to our surfaces. So I've painted on a coloured slip there that just needs to dry a little bit longer. But you can also do slip trailing, which is a lot like piping icing, I think. So you just pop it in a bottle with a nice narrow nozzle. Depending on how runny the slip is, you can be quite precise and have nice narrow marks and do drawings and patterns with the slip. And the slip that's trailed is raised from the surface. So you end up with, again, a bit more depth to the surface because the slip is above the level of the surface, which can add some interest and make it much more tactile as a surface. For sgraffito on this end, we can use ribbon tools to scrape through the colour to the clay behind. Or one of the tools I quite like is this one with a curved blade, because I find I can get narrower lines with a bit more accuracy. You do have to be aware with sgraffito of what the edges of the clay are doing. That's why the ribbon tools and the curved blades are quite good, because they lift some of the clay away onto the blade rather than leaving with really ragged edges like that need tidying up. If you do get the ragged edges, I would suggest you leave it to dry for a bit, and then once the edges are dry, then you can kind of wipe the bubbles off. You can also use both of these together on one piece. So again, you end up with the 3 layers. You've got the indent from the sgraffito, the layer of the clay, and then the raised of the trailing. And they can work all together. And of course, with slips, you've got the colour with the slips, so all you need to do is put transparent glaze over the top for your pieces when they're all finished too, which can make things a bit quicker. So those are just a few ideas of the kind of things you can do with making marks and patterns in the surface of the clay. Really, you need to have fun, you need to play, you need to experiment and see how you would work with all the different kind of layering up and mixing of the techniques and the ideas to get the surface that you want. And there's lots of different ways of doing it. These are literally just touching a few of the possibilities with these ones. If you've got some great ways for people to make patterns in clay, the surface of clay that you would like to share, then please feel free to put something in the comments. And it would be great to see what you guys are making. I hope that was useful, and I will be back again soon. Bye.